Welcome to Gaining the Technology Leadership Edge, a podcast for tech executives. We provide strategies and tactics to help executives succeed and further their career goals. With interviews from industry experts, leaders, and innovators, this show will surely get you on the edge of your seat with thought-provoking advice on how to stay ahead of the competition. Welcome to Gaining the Technology Leadership Edge, a podcast exploring the latest trends, strategies, and insights in technology leadership. We'll discuss the most important topics and ideas shaping the industry today, from emerging technologies to digital transformation and beyond. Join us to learn all the juicy secrets of tech leaders, their biggest successes and failures, on our quest for gaining that all-important technology edge. Are you ready? Let's get started. Today, my guest is Bob Cotton. Bob has decades of experience making technology work worldwide, delivering many digital transformations and mission-critical programs for his clients, including SaaS and cloud migrations. He's led international technology and consulting businesses with over 15 years of board experience, turning businesses around and driving growth with a focus on customer success and people development. He has a track record of working across cultures to build resilient coalitions and strong relationships with clients, vendors, and partners. Today, he works with technology executives, helping them overcome their stresses and challenges to deliver on their goals and meet their customer expectations. Welcome to the show, Bob.
Well, thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
It sounds like you do a lot of the same things that I do. I mean, I work with my clients. My main focus is on communication, hiring and keeping the right staff, and achieving work-life balance. Those are the three things I promise my clients they'll get. So it sounds like you do some similar stuff. Which
very similar. Yeah, very similar. So for me, my three would be communication, work-life balance, and value for people, value for what you do, the value of what you do. Those would be the three things.
And that's interesting because, you term that value, and I always term it I basically say hiring and retaining your tech army.
Yeah.
And my feeling is a lot of tech executives don't empower their employees. They want to be the ruler, and they don't realize that having an army of people to help you is a lot better than you trying to run it all yourself. So I think when they provide value, their people feel that and stick around. So I think we're kind of approaching that same topic, but from a different angle, which is interesting. But
yeah, I think you're right.
But I think that's great because I think those are honestly the three. I mean, I was a CTO, and those were the three areas that I struggle with, especially communicating with upper management, like the CEO, trying to get him to understand why technology is a little slower at rolling things out. And it's not that we're slow, it's that we're meticulous, that kind of. So tell me, obviously we both agree that communication is an issue for tech executives. What do you see with communication around tech executives? What kind of issues do you see?
I think tech execs, first of all, are under a lot of pressure. Like any exec is under pressure, whatever their skill set, their niche. I think the trouble can be with technology is that you're in that world of how do you make the technology work, and it's very easy in that struggle to forget why you're doing it. And there's a reason. There's a business guy or people, they made an investment, they have expectations, and they don't know the detail. They're not into the detail. They just want it to work, and they want it to work in a certain time frame, in a certain way. And the trick, I think, or the challenge is to put yourself in their shoes and feel how they would feel, understand how they would feel, really feel that, and then think, well, if I was in their position, this is what they need to hear in order to be able to make the decisions I need them to make to support me, to get off my back, or ask me the questions I can help them understand better, and we can have a better relationship rather than, they think I'm just here to make up the numbers and deliver stuff to them whenever. That they really understand that I'm a strategic part of their life, and I'm as important to them as they are to me. So it's that trust thing. But I think that's the challenge, is sometimes it's easy to forget that because of the pace of what you're being asked to deliver and the pressures that are on you.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's a lot of times too, it's figuring out how they like to be communicated with. I had a CEO who He's a lot like me. He didn't want to know the why behind everything. He just wanted to know, when is it going to get done? And how much is it going to cost us? Those are like his
Yeah.
two important
Yeah.
aspects. He didn't really care the why. And he used to say to me, I hired you to figure out the why. So I don't need to
Yeah.
know the why. And I trust that you're going to figure out the why correctly and handle the why.
Yeah.
What I want to know is, are you going to maintain the budget, and are you going to get it done in a timely fashion? And I worked for a restaurant delivery service, and so we were very holiday driven. And so some changes that they would request were very time sensitive, right? And others were not. And it was just a matter of balancing it. But that brings me to work-life balance. So what do you see as far as the challenges for a tech executive to achieve good work-life balance?
Oh, I think it's really tough, because when I started out, I had a mobile phone, and a lot of people didn't have mobile phones, and I went internationally with a mobile phone, and that was wow, you have a tri-band phone. Now everyone has a phone. You can do your mail on it. You've got WhatsApp. You've got all these devices, ways of communicating, and you're never really alone. And we don't have a culture of turning off the phone. It's sort of frowned upon, even though people are trying to encourage it. So I think the challenge for a tech exec is how do you switch off? How do you create the space for yourself to re-energize, recharge, and get some clarity, and not just be dealing through either the next fire that's actually out there, or you're looking for the next fire because you're going through your email or whatever. And how do you figure out a smarter way to work? Because I'm a great believer in that adage, what got you to here will not get you to there. So the need to keep re-questioning yourself, find that space, and say, okay, let me try something different, and retain my balance. I think that's the tough bit for most tech execs, actually.
I agree with you. I think you mentioned having the cell phone when other people didn't. And I think a lot of people would see that as a way you're not achieving good work-life balance, because these days we talk about boundaries and staying off of your communication tools that you communicate with your team. But at the same time, the struggle is that your CEO is expecting things to continue to move forward. They're not really caring that it's Saturday or Sunday or a holiday
Exactly.
or whatever. There's a deadline, and they want you to meet the deadline. And I think the key is, to me, not just having the boundaries, but enforcing the boundaries. And I think that's where people fall off is, wife complains that you're never present when, they're out to dinner. And so you set a boundary that when I'm out to dinner, I'm not going to answer a text message from my team until I'm done with dinner. And maybe you even set that up by sending your team a message. All right, I'm not available for 2 hours. But if you continually violate that boundary by responding when you're on that time period where you said you wouldn't respond, it's like teaching an animal, after a while, the consistent behavior will teach your team that it's okay to contact you anytime they want, and they will.
Exactly. I think you're absolutely right. And I think the other thing in there is, the question is that often people will do those things, and they don't actually step back and think, why is my team writing to me while I'm having dinner? Why is this even happening? And I think, but you need to step out of it and step to one side and ask yourself that question and think, well, actually, maybe if I delegated better, or maybe if I upskilled somebody, or maybe I just empowered them more, then, there are other ways of creating those boundaries, but you need the space to think them through.
Yeah, you have to create a culture in your department with your team where work-life balance is considered important to them. And you could have people who work 7 days a week, but as long as they're making sure that on some of those days they're only working a little bit of time, and then giving time to their family and friends and personal life, then you're doing okay. And I think when you teach your team that they need to have work-life balance, they then respect work-life balance of other people a great deal more. It's the old adage, right? People do to others what others do to them. And if someone's not respecting your boundaries and your time, then you're probably not going to respect theirs. And at that point, it doesn't even become a respect issue to me. It more becomes like an SOP. That's how they act. So I have to kind of respond in like manner.
Yes.
I personally think that the work-life balance issue, it's a symptom, and you kind of hit on it there. It's a symptom of problems within your department.
Yeah.
What are you delegating to the right people? Have you taught your people how to do their job without needing to hold your hand? I mean, that's why I teach my people. I use a meeting system that I call PACE, and the E in there is empower, and it takes the employee and it empowers them to make some decisions. So, like example, I'll always have a what's working and what's not working section in a meeting, and the what's not working section, I might have an email server issue, but I'll assign it to the help desk person to be the stakeholder, and they drive the completion of the project. They become the project manager for that. And so what it does is it teaches them a little bit about email problems that are going on. They connect with, say, maybe the email administrator, who they might not have even ever talked to before, and it creates teamwork. But it also empowers them to fix a problem that we're having. When they come back to that next meeting and they say, we go, okay, email server was a problem last time. Is it fixed? And they can say, yes, they are so proud of themselves that they solved a problem. And they will go to battle for you all the time if you treat them that way. It just is what it is.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great example, and it's funny. I was lucky in my career bouncing around different roles. I learned that same thing by chance, really, but out of it you learn how other people are. You learn that the guy who you thought was a techie who sat in the corner is actually a lovely person who's got a bunch of pressures, but together you solved something and made something happen and made the business guy satisfied and happy. And you think, if you hadn't reached out to these people and moved out of your comfort zone, you wouldn't learn these skills and you wouldn't appreciate how other people think. And I think that's the key. You have a great technology, you can have a great product, you can have all these things, but if you can't get people to come together and operate independently but together as a team, then you're always going to struggle, I think. And that's when work-life balance starts just disappearing, and over the long term I think that's a really bad place for anybody to be.
So what has been like your most challenging project and why?
Gosh, my most challenging project, I guess the one that comes to mind because it's the most recent was during the pandemic when we implemented a transportation management solution, and it was running globally, the operations for a massive organization. But we were pushing the boundaries of the technology. We knew that together, the team, the client and us who were working on it, and the other partners, the other implementation partners. But when we were live, then the pandemic hit, and then all this demand stuff started going all over the place. And that really pushed the limits operationally of what we could do. And that was really tough because you've got the pandemic on there, the company's delivering to people and they need it. They need it for their lives. It's really important, and getting the balance right of how to make the technology work, keep the show on the road, keep the lights on, handle the peaks and troughs in the business. That was really tough, and do that as well as we were rolling it out globally. So we were rolling the program out, and then we had to keep it on. So that was about a year, I think, of that. And it was what we were talking about before. It's like 7 days a week, but if you can carve out on a Sunday, it's only half an hour, then you can maintain that work-life balance. But that was probably that's in my memory, because it's most recent, that was the toughest.
Well, and we like my wife and I run our business here, and we have a technology arm in our business, but we only work on weekends occasionally. And we plan it ahead of time, a specific task. Like, for instance, we have a podcast network, and she was working on rebuilding the website and with a different look and feel. It was 7 years old. It was time. And we planned the rollout to be on a weekend because it's slower. And we spent this past weekend, we spent probably like 6 hours total, 3 on Saturday, 3 on Sunday, essentially, close there doing that. But we really stick to boundaries like that. And we'll say, all right, we're going to work this weekend. We're only going to work this many hours. And when that time comes and goes, barring any like really serious issues, we stick to that time limit, and it creates a work-life balance. I mean, we get asked all the time, like, how do you have a marriage where you don't fight all the time and whatnot, and yet you work together 24 hours a day? And a lot of that's boundaries, So I think boundaries
absolutely.
are something that tech executives need to investigate, set, and enforce. I really think that's a key. I used to do this thing where we had a management consultant for the company that I worked for, and we would meet weekly with these people. But then they had a program. It was a 1 week long program, and you'd go to this hotel and you'd sit and listen to these lessons. And I said to the guy, my biggest problem is that I have an office with a giant window, and so when people walk by and they see me in there, they go, "Do you have 5 minutes? Just 5 minutes?" And then 25 minutes later, I'm still there. He said, "It's easy to solve. Go to Radio Shack, get a timer. When they walk in the room, say, oh, so it's only if this is going to take longer than your time that you just said, you need to set an appointment with me. Oh, but 10 minutes is fine. Great. You set the timer for 10 minutes and you start it. When the timer goes off, you have to say, well, in order to continue this conversation, we're going to have to set a meeting and we're going to put it on calendar." It worked great. I was really resistant to the concept at first because it just felt almost rude. But then I thought about it and I thought, well, but hold on. That person came in my office, said they needed 10 minutes of my time only. How is it rude to enforce the 10 minutes they asked for, right?
Exactly. I mean, the rudeness is them saying, I'll take 10 minutes and I respect
knowing
your
it's going to
time.
take 30.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
and people do it all the time. It's just human nature, isn't it?
Yeah.
But you're right. It's about the boundary to say, no, hang on a minute. It's my time. It's my life. You get 10 minutes and sorry, we're out of time. Come back tomorrow or whenever.
Well, and interestingly, what would happen is the worst time wasters wouldn't even bother coming in the office and saying, "Hey, I need 5 minutes of your time." They would email me and say, "I have something I need to discuss with you. When is your calendar open for 30 minutes to talk?" Suddenly that 10-minute talk was actually 30 minutes,
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I think it's because they couldn't get away with pushing the boundaries. And I think people in general, they know boundaries are important, but I think a lot of people think it's rude to enforce their boundaries. And it really isn't, because if the other person is being made aware of the boundary and then they're not adhering to the boundary, who's really the rude person there, right?
Exactly.
Like,
it's about respect,
control it.
right?
Yeah, no respect for you.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. I see, like, you did a lot of SaaS and cloud migrations over the years. What was one that you're particularly proud of?
So I think the one I just touched on was a SaaS project. So that I was very proud of because we pulled that one off. Another one that comes to mind is from about 7 years ago, I guess. We put in an HR SaaS solution for one of the transport provider for the trains in the UK. And again, that was quite early. That was quite pushing the boundaries a bit. And then we pulled that off as well. And that went very smoothly. So that's another one that springs to mind. It's funny with SaaS, as it's changed, as the technology has evolved, the concept has evolved, the things that were tough 5-6 years ago are easy now, but there are new challenges because clients are looking to do more and move faster and they want more innovation. So it's, in a way, it's the same old stuff. It's just packaged in a slightly different way. That would be another one.
Interesting. It's like I've been struggling. I mentioned earlier that we rebuilt a website and we're trying to automate some of we get hundreds of guest requests, let's say. And so we're trying to find ways to automate the initial part of the process. And Zapier is a great tool to like connect to my CRM, update fields, trigger automations. But then there are things that it does that are just plain, I don't get it. Like, I put in an email address, I store it in a field in my task manager. I reject the person. I have Zapier read that field, find their record in the CRM and trigger the automation, only it continually finds the wrong email address. And you're like, but it says right here what you're looking for. How are you not finding it? And then there's other times where there's just features that are lacking and you're like, great tool, cheap, but man, do I wish it could do X, Y, or Z.
Yeah.
And I've learned, I used to just take that with me, now I've learned to reach out to their support and go, hey, I was trying to do this and you don't have that feature. Could you maybe consider adding this to your roadmap? Sometimes they'll contact you back and say, you're right, we don't have that feature, but you can accomplish the same thing by doing this little 3-step process or whatever. So like in your career, I take it you've done a lot of project work. So you've gone from place to place. You don't just stick in one company. So our careers are a lot parallel, because my ex-father-in-law used to complain that back in my day, we got a job and kept it for 30 years. Like, well, I've kept my job for 10. I'm literally running the same business I was running 10 years ago. And he'll say, but that's not the same thing. Well, but it is. What they don't understand is just because I work for 5 different companies at a time doesn't mean that I have 5 different jobs at a time,
Yeah.
So you've done a lot of that kind of work. What do you see as some of the challenges for someone in a field like that?
So I think if we're talking about project work now, I think and delivering project work or selling project work, I think one of the toughest being a road warrior, because you tend to be on the road. Even today with remote working, it's not like it used to be where you really were just pounding the pavement, or on planes, actually, generally for me, or living out of hotels. That's probably one of the hardest things, because you're maybe away from your friends, your family, so that work-life balance starts to become a bit of a problem. I think the other challenge is being relevant. So keeping your knowledge and skills to a level that you can deliver value to the client, whether you're making the pitch, whether you're delivering it, or whether you're working with a bunch of peers, because everybody's playing that game. And so there's this constant need to keep refreshing your knowledge, which is, again, a bit of a drain, really, especially if you're trying to, sell something or deliver something. And meanwhile, there's this other pressure to keep up to date. So I think those are 2 tough things that are there. And I think the other one is the customer focus, to retain your customer focus. So I did a lot of project work. I did a lot of running consulting businesses, technology businesses. And in the midst of all the detail and the firefights of day to day, remembering that the customer and what the customer's expectations are need to be met, or at least satisfied in some way, that keeping your eye on that is so important, because if you lose that, you lose the customer, the whole house of cards starts to crash around you. So I think those are the three things.
I agree with you there too. I think remembering that, your gut generally doesn't point you in the wrong direction is really important. I still run a technology services company. I focus on NetSuite development, mostly some chatbot development, and then I do CTO on demand work. When I'm working with my teams, I'll tell my lead, I'll say, I know this is a particularly complicated problem, and I know you've been working really hard to solve the problem, but I'm getting a feeling that the client is getting frustrated by how long it's taking to get done. We need to do something about that. And I'll tell them, I hate to put pressure on you, but when it comes to losing the client, that's our reputation on the line. We don't want clients walking away. We want to keep clients. And they always manage to step up in some way, shape, or form. And I think sometimes teams like that, they lose sight of the end goal, which is to keep the customer happy. And they get so bogged down in what they find in the rabbit hole that they go down when they're trying to solve the technology problem, that they make perfection the enemy, because they want it to be a perfect solution rather than a solution that works for the customer. And by lighting a fire under them and saying, you know what, we're going to lose this client if you don't get this done. Like, I recently had this situation where a guy worked for 2 weeks on a problem, and it's an integration that was horribly done. It's overly complicated, and like, let's just say we found areas where there were like 60, 70 lines of code, and it could have been 1 line of code. They just didn't know what they were doing with the system, and they admit that. So that's the interesting thing. But then the enemy is that the lead says, well, but if the client knows that it's too complicated, why are they worrying about how long it takes? They don't care. They want it done. They don't want to spend thousands and thousands of dollars to fix one bug. They just want it done. And so I think that's the other challenge that a tech leader has, is getting their, being, what's the word that I'm trying to think? Having empathy for your team
Yes.
and not putting too much pressure on your team, but at the same time, when necessary, ratchet it up a little bit.
Yeah.
But like explain to them, hey, dude, I know it's complicated and I know you're
Yeah.
working really hard, but
Yeah.
here's the reality. Because that's your job, right? Like as the executive, your job is to make sure that project gets completed.
Exactly, because you're not cutting the code and you're not doing the design. And I always used to say to my teams, it's like my role, we're all in this together. And I'm just here to say, actually, we have a problem. This is what I'm hearing. I'm sharing it with you. Do we understand we have a problem? And how can I help you as much as I can? And I think like the example you gave there, where you're getting people to understand the other person and put themselves in their shoes, then they go, oh yeah, okay, I get it. They don't want to spend tens of thousands of dollars on 60-line code bug. We need to fix it. And they get impatient. Okay, no, I understand. And then they'll go away and do it. But I, like you, have probably encountered people who'd be more of the sort of gun to the head type of motivation. And that's just the wrong way to go. I think what you would describe is absolutely the way I would approach it too.
Well, because you're acting like a coach and not a, slave driver, so to speak.
Exactly.
I mean,
because everyone's got a choice, right? If you don't treat people with respect and you don't value their skills and tell them you value what they're doing, it doesn't mean they're right all the time. Doesn't mean I'm right all the time. If you don't do that, then people walk and they'll go around the corner and work for the other guy. So you have to value your people and treat them with respect, but challenge them as well.
Well, it's interesting because it's not to derail us here, but you brought a thought to mind when you said that. It reminds me of the current political climate across the world. I'm not talking United States. I'm just talking across the world. Everybody chooses a side. And no matter if you're on the opposite side, they don't like you and they're not going to listen to you and all of that. And I think instead, if everybody understands that, that other person has a reason why they think what they think, ask them why. And if what they say makes sense, then accept the fact that you're different.
Exactly. Exactly. Because outside that context, if you said to somebody, I wish we were all the same, people go, no, we don't want that. But in these situations, people expect that sometimes, or they fall into that trap. So I think you're right. It's somewhere along the way, people in these situations, people lose the art of speaking to each other. And it just becomes do, or react. And I always felt that part of my role when I was leading things was to kind of break that cycle if it was happening and try and create the conditions where if it was client and my team, or client, my team, and partner team, how do we achieve what we really want to, why we're really here, and make that happen? Try and reset things.
Yeah, like in the 10th episode of this show, I had a guest on and he talked about how he doesn't like to have to be in a position to say, the reason we're doing this is because I said so. I mean, no leader likes to get there. But then we had this conversation about it, and we both came to the realization that sometimes that becomes necessary, because like I have the example of like working with DBAs, and DBAs are interesting people because they look at data very differently than a developer would. And I've had DBAs say, I can get that stored procedure to be like 1 millisecond faster. Give me another 3 days. Wait a second. 3 days delay for 1 millisecond. Do and so I'd say to them, how's the user going to notice 1 millisecond difference? Well, they won't, but I will. It needs to be more efficient. Okay. And then you say to them, no, I don't think we should do that. But I'm telling you, as a database administrator, it should be done. Well, eventually you may have to say, look, the reason we're not going to do it is, as the guy managing the project, I don't think 3 days is worth the trade-off for 1 millisecond. So no, we're not going to do that. But I do think that you have to find a way to do that. Very similar to the other thing we just talked about, where you let them know that I know you're a perfectionist. I know you want this to be the greatest, fastest data retrieval ever, but that's just not what the client cares about. So we have to give the client what they care about. And what they care about is the deadline. They don't want to hear, oh, we need 3 more days to shave a millisecond off of a thing. But they truly believe that most DBAs that you run into, they truly believe that millisecond matters. And they'll say that, well, if you do 1 million of these in a day, look how much time you save. Not
Yeah,
that
I've had
much,
that
really.
conversation, and then you go, yeah, but they don't do that. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
yeah,
Well,
yeah,
and that's what it comes down to is you, as the project lead, you have to let your team understand what the landscape looks like. They
that's
can't
right.
just go. I mean, isn't that why we give them spec documents, right? So they can.
Well, that's right. Yeah. And the other thing is reminding them that it's a team, right? So their individual contribution, as fantastic as it is, they're there to serve the rest of the team. And, if there's a deadline, there's a deadline. That's the way it goes. But I think one of the tricks I always found useful was, you'd say, and again, circumstances don't always allow it, but if you can say, okay, guys, you want 3 days, I'll tell you what, I'll give you 3 hours. Right? Or I'll give you till tomorrow morning. It needs to work. And if you do what you can, and then that's a deal. And then they've got a little bit of freedom. But yeah,
Yeah,
you have to draw the line, because yes, it is a team, but there is a leader, and you strike the balance.
that's a great approach because you're compromising with them. You're saying,
Mm,
I'm not willing to give you 3 days, but I'll give you till tomorrow morning. And however fast you made it by tomorrow morning, that's what we're going to go with.
yeah.
So, do your best, don't break it. I had one time had an employee tell me that put undue pressure on them, and I kind of got a chuckle out of that because you're the one that asked to do this part of the
That's
project,
right.
not me. And
That's
I'm
right.
actually letting you do it. I'm just not agreeing to
Yeah.
how long I'm going to let you take to do it.
Yeah.
I don't see how that's putting undue pressure on you. In fact, I think I just helped you. I saved two of your work days. No longer have to be focused on this issue. They can be
That's
focused on
right.
something new. People are
That's
funny
right.
like that.
They are,
Or
aren't they? Because you could even turn around and say, tell you what, if it's stressing you out, we'll just go with it as it is, right? And then I'm giving you 3 days back, and you're not stressed.
yeah,
But he wouldn't. I
exactly.
bet he wouldn't see it that way. Yeah.
No, and
Oh,
that's the interesting thing. Like that's part of the challenge, I think, of tech executives too, is everybody's different. The way they
that's right.
handle things, the way they approach. I mean, my clients used to tell me I'm the most user-friendly technologist because I talk to them like a human being. I don't talk to them like
Yeah.
a computer. And I can see you have that as well. It's a huge advantage, but it's unfortunately something that's going away
Yeah.
in the tech space. You start to, I mean, I take meetings with technology like the client with the integration issue. We're actually meeting this morning with a company that has an off-the-shelf integration tool that would have probably saved them $100,000 had they just done it from the beginning. But because he's so technical and he's up here with the technology stuff, he's not seeing the forest through the
Mhm.
trees at
Yeah.
all. And
Yeah.
trying to get him to understand without upsetting him has been a
Yeah.
real challenge. And so what I ended up asking him was, my guy spent 2 weeks researching this bug. In that 2 weeks time, we could have set up this integration tool, which would have given you more bang for your buck.
Yeah.
How would your CEO be breathing down your neck if suddenly all of the integrations were just working flawlessly? Well, no. Okay. See, that's why we want to help you here. You
Yeah.
brought us in
Yeah.
to make recommendations, and we're
Yeah.
recommending that you do it the industry standard way. And that's the key, right? Like,
Yeah.
there's a reason why thousands and thousands of big companies don't build their own custom integration.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. No,
You like, go ahead.
it's funny. It's funny. It's like the analogy. I always remember the analogy that somebody said to me once. It's like, would you build your own house, or would you get somebody to build it for you? Right. Very few people go and build their own house. Most people get somebody else to do it. So why is this any different? And you're like, yeah, actually, that's a really good way of putting it.
Well, and imagine if the platform you're integrating with on either side drastically changes.
Yeah. What are you
Whose
going to
problem
do?
is that when you paid for a software? It's the people's
Exactly.
problem that write that software. And chances are they were in a position to be notified months ahead of time of that change through their partnership with those two companies that
Yeah.
you wouldn't have. You wouldn't have that advantage. And that's
Yeah.
one of the things I explained to him too, is like, NetSuite tomorrow could turn off this feature. Your integration depends on it in like 25 different places. If you were using an off-the-shelf solution, they would already have it fixed. But because you're not, you're going to find out one day that it doesn't work, and now you have to fix it. And that
Yeah.
costs you time and money and frustration with your user base.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny listening to that. You make me think. So as you say, it's this trick about being able to communicate with people who see the world in a very particular way. And then I think the other thing to what you were saying that I've encountered a lot is the whole risk management discussion, where people don't look at the risks or the downsides. They think, well, as long as they deliver it, and then the show's going to be on the road forever, isn't it? And just getting people to think, well, actually, there are risks here. Some of them are small, some of them are real. What do you want to do? And force them to think it through. That's kind of challenging for a lot of people, I think, especially when you go tech meets the business. That's kind of tricky. That's a tricky space.
Yeah, it really is. And like, I've discovered how much CTOs actually know by talking through these things, because you start to realize how many balls you have to have in the air all the time when you're managing this stuff. And it's a very stressful job, or it can be a very stressful job. You can make it into a less stressful job if you follow correct processes, but it's still, at the end of the day, the buck stops with you. And that's why I've never understood why someone who understands that doesn't empower their team, because having a team that needs to ask you for every decision just puts even more pressure on you. And why did you hire that person to run that part of the department if you don't trust them to make the decision?
Exactly. I remember I had a team. I took over a team once, and it was when I was running a consulting business, and we had to forecast revenues. It was across Europe, and I was getting a hard time about the numbers, and then I would talk to them about it all, and they would be very passive. And one day I said, look, guys, I want your opinion, honestly, about where we are, what we can do. And they said, really? He said, because the people before never did this. And I said, guys, if I didn't need you, right, you wouldn't be here, right? I just do it all myself. And they're like, oh yeah, okay. And that really reset the relationship, and then it was good. But you're absolutely right. I don't understand this. If you need to control everything and want to be a superhero, well, that's fine, but you perhaps shouldn't be in that sort of leadership position where you've got a team and you're really supposed to be driving an organization, because the two don't really go together.
It was interesting. Yesterday we went to see a movie called Air, and I don't know if you've heard of it. It just came out, and it's basically the story of how Nike signed Michael Jordan.
I think I saw a headline. Yeah, okay.
And interestingly, like Michael Jordan, he wanted to sign with Adidas. That was his shoe, and he was really going to consider Converse as well, but Adidas was the shoe he wanted to sign with. And the guy that was the head of the basketball division at Nike has all this pressure on him, and he's told, well, you have $250,000, but we want 3 athletes signed for that $250,000. And he said, who the heck can I sign for, a portion of $250,000? I need more money. And they're telling him, why would I give you more money? The basketball division is this big failure. We're not growing as fast as we should. And he keeps saying, it's because you give me $250,000 and tell me to sign 3 athletes. Yeah. They don't want to listen, right? So he comes up with this plan to give the $250,000 to Michael Jordan. And he comes with this whole idea of like, I'm going to create a prototype shoe, and I'm going to call it Air Jordan. And not only that, I'm going to violate the NBA rules. The NBA at the time was supposed to be white shoe with a little bit, maybe like the logo could be in color. He made it more of like a Chicago Bulls color, red and black. And they would fine him like $5,000 a game. Well, Nike decided that we'll pay the fine for you as well. And so he ended up, based off of the speech that this guy gave during their meeting, Michael Jordan ended up signing with Nike. But the whole moral of the movie is they changed the way athletes negotiate. What they ended up doing was his mom said, hey, I thought this was the funniest part of the whole movie. She said, so I read your offer sheet, and I think there's been a clerical mistake, because it doesn't say anything here about Michael getting a percentage of the gross sales of Air Jordan shoes. And he goes, oh, it doesn't work that way in this industry. And she goes, well, the only way he's going to sign is if he gets a percentage. He's not signing with anybody unless he gets a percentage. Why would he? You're using his name. And so they agreed. Well, they had a little blurb on the screen talking about how it really changed the financial outlook for up and coming athletes, because now when they sign, they get a cut of their line of shoe. And it was funny. The CEO kept saying, well, how big can it be? I mean, the biggest shoe we've ever sold is $3 million. Yeah, they did 163 million in the first year. But like people probably wondering, how does that relate? Well, the way it relates is to what you were talking about. Like, I trust you. I hired you. I hired you to build our basketball division, but I'm going to complain that it's not going anywhere because of the bootstraps that I've put on you, the handcuffs I've given you. You know, I've told you I'm only giving you 250,000 and I want 3 athletes, not one. Rather than listening to your innovation of, hey, I want to sign just this one guy and use all of that money for the one guy.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, if their competitors are doing that, then they're looking like fools offering like $50,000 when someone else is offering $300,000. And it'd be the same thing. If I brought in one DBA and expected him to do all this work and someone else was doing it for 4 DBAs, that DBA is going, why am I, what the heck? Like, wow,
yeah,
they want to kill me, man. Why are they killing me here? Or, you could do the other thing, bring in 8 when you're only supposed to have 4. Now they're sitting there going like this all day long, I think paying attention to your employees, how well they're getting along, those types of things are important.
Really.
We forget that when we're busy dealing with our own pressures. But I mean, you're right. Why you shouldn't be a leader if you're not going to be willing to handle those things. Nobody forced you into that position. You accepted that as a promotion, and along with it comes other things. But this has been a pretty great conversation. Why don't you let people know like where they can find you on the internet if they want to reach out?
Yeah, so you can find me on LinkedIn. You can get me at robert@robertcotton.coach or algodonservices@gmail.com.
I will make sure those get into the show notes and to the video description. And thanks again for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
No, thanks for having me, Mike. It's been great.
Been a pleasure. But thanks for tuning in to Gaining the Technology Leadership Edge. We hope you had a great time learning everything you need to know to stay ahead of the technology curve. Remember, be curious, be updated on all the latest trends, and show them who's the boss. Until next time, we'll be back with plenty more techie tips and tricks so you can stay on top of your game. See ya.